when we don't have enough money to take care of our facility and it becomes run down. And then it becomes an eyesore. And if the neighbors care about that, and many of them will, and it becomes an eyesore, they're not going to want anything to do with you. They're going to complain about you more than anything else. And that's unfortunate, and sometimes that happens. In that interim ministry that I was telling you about earlier, where I had the guy and the Baylor nurse, when I first came to that church, I allowed plenty of time to get there because I was a speaker that morning. I could not find it. I drove by this field. I drove by these, couldn't find. Finally out in the field, I said, that looks like a sign out there, because I couldn't read it because the weeds had grown up and the paint was peeling off. I said, I bet that's their sign. But I looked around for a facility and I saw what looked like a warehouse, maybe a half a mile off in the distance. So I said, I'm run out of time. If this isn't it, then I'm going to go back home because I can't find them. I drove over, I pulled into the parking lot. It was where the church was located. I noticed right away weeds growing up through the tarmac. I saw a few cars parked, but I didn't see anybody. Okay, I saw two buildings. One had the paint peeling off of it. And I said, now which one is the sanctuary? So I went over this and I thought, I think this might be it. And I went over. The door was kind of jimmied in a sense. The ground here, we have this black gumbo that gets wet and it moves. So, and the latest rain, the door was that you couldn't close it all the way. So I kind of propped it open, or else I wasn't going to be able to preach for them if I couldn't get in the building, because I still hadn't seen anybody. Got inside the building, I looked down at the carpet, it was frayed. I looked up at the ceiling, it was this kind of ceiling, but you could see the water stains. I was really impressed. Walked through the next door, and there they were. And it was almost time to start, so all the people had gathered in there, probably 40 people, maybe at the most. I waited for about 3 months, and then I said, okay, it's time for me to preach on what it was like to spend my first day here. Do you realize that they were shocked? That they saw none of those things? So now a part of my consulting when I get to this area of setting is to go do a walkthrough one morning. And I'm looking for these kinds of things. I'm looking to see, do you have greeters in the parking lot? Do they have people I can go to ask questions, and are they clearly identified? Are there any hazards here that could be harmful? I tell you, the kinds of things I've seen are in the nursery where you got the crawlers, the electrical receptacles without those little inserts in them to keep little fingers out. Stuff that is being worked on and just left there like water coolers with the cowl off where little hands can get in there. I'm talking about in the children's area again. Usually the kitchen is notorious for not being clean. So I do this kind of stuff for churches, and I call it to their attention. Now when I did it with this other church in Plano, they were shocked. They didn't see any of that, but they did after I called their attention to it. Another thing you can do is you can take them on a tour of their facilities. But I just did this in the room. And I go around and I take snapshots with my iPhone. And I'll put that up on a screen. I'll say, now, do you recognize this? Oh, yeah. So the following week, they had a work day, and they were out there scraping paint and all that. I think the church still died anyway. That's another story. But that's a typical story. My important point there is that they didn't see it. And guests would see it, and guests would not come to something like that. A lot of guests are just looking for an excuse not to go to church. Don't give them one. Yeah. And that's what some of the churches do. Now, when I get into facilities here, I talk about such things as what are churches doing in this area? Why are facilities important? And basically, where your church locates determines whether or not a person will come to your church. Because if they live beyond 20 to 30 minutes, as we saw before, they're not coming to your church. It's not close enough to them. So that will determine where they go to church.